How's it going, everyone? I'm Aaron, head of content with Polarr Next. Today, we've got Ken Mendoza with us. He's a former software engineer, now wedding photographer based in San Francisco. Ken got his first taste of Polarr Next at WPPI this year, and after a long night's work, feeding the software thousands of images, he was amazed by the results. He's completely updated his editing workflow ever since, and he's here to tell us all about how Polarr Next is shaping the future of photo editing. So if you like this type of content, make sure you smash that like button and hit the subscribe to keep up with all our latest videos. All right, everyone, welcome back to another video. Today, I've got a very special guest. His name is Ken Mendoza, all the way from San Francisco, an award-winning photographer, and he's going to be sharing with us his experience using Polarr Next and how it's changed his workflow. So Ken, would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do, all that good stuff.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Aaron. This is Ken Mendoza. I've been a professional wedding photographer for 15 years, and I have three different brands. I do a lot of outdoor wedding photography in in California and the Bay Area. And I started off as a Yosemite specialist in the national park. So I have a website, YosemiteWeddingPhotographers.com. And then I started to branch out into other venues. So I had also do big Saturday weddings around the Bay Area. And then I also do weekday micro weddings at San Francisco City Hall.
Nice. And so wedding photography, was that something that you always have been interested in and that was just always your goal? It sounds like you've traveled a lot and got to hang out in Yosemite. Like, did you start off in landscape or just mainly weddings?
Yeah, as a kid, I spent a lot of time in Yosemite. There was a program for introducing kids from the inner city to the national parks called the Yosemite Institute. And so I went 4 years in high school to Yosemite and learned photography and natural, about the ecology from rangers. And then I did a lot of heavy backcountry skiing for many years.
Wow.
So I was mostly a landscape guy. Mm-hmm. And then after I worked in tech for a long time, but on the weekends I'd go to Yosemite and take photos. And then a friend of mine who was a wedding photographer introduced me to his craft, and I loved it.
Wow.
So then I just kind of got addicted to it and did it on the weekends for a long time.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you can talk about the transition from landscapes to portraiture. Editing wise, how did that transition happen? Like, how were you editing your landscape photos? What was that like? And then when you started doing weddings, were there any specific programs or like Photoshop or anything that you had to get into now that you're doing portraiture?
Well, I started off in film doing mostly slides. And that was a lot of work, having to get things absolutely perfect in camera. And then, but then in 2008 or 2009, I completely transitioned to digital for my weddings. And I was using Adobe Lightroom version 1 from the in fact, I was using it at the beta. And then I also used the Apple product that I forgot what it's called now. So old. Aperture, yes. And so I've been going through that long incremental process of waiting for Adobe updates in Lightroom all these years. So yeah, it was Lightroom, and it was always a struggle because the computers are never fast enough.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that's kind of the same thing. Like, computers used to never be fast enough.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought, okay, now with this new processor, I'd always buy the most expensive computer I can possibly, afford, and it was just never fast enough. And then even when the M1 came out, it was like, okay. Library mode's okay, but there's just so much really old code in Adobe Lightroom. It really feels clunky after all these years, even though it's getting a little faster. But that's one of my biggest frustrations as a wedding photographer is all the time in front of the computer. And because I'm kind of on the high end brand, like everything I deliver to clients is edited and at the same level. So that means a lot of time on the computer. And because of my tech background, I've always been checking what's out there. So when this AI era started just a few years ago, I was already trying some of those packages and hoping to get where we are now, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like what you talked about, the challenges facing wedding photography, the big one being the time spent in front of the computer. Let's talk about like AI and like other programs you may have tried out and looked into before Polarr Next.
Okay, so in my tech career, I was a scientist, but also was a data scientist. Like I did biotech, but I was doing a lot of programming, and so I was familiar with some machine learning technologies at the end of my career, and in fact, I did some automation in that realm. So then when I heard about AI programs coming out, I immediately would apply for the beta and, or at least get in really early. And so I tried Imagine, which was the first that I ran into. And it was definitely step up. It was like the way I would characterize it is, remember when auto tone first came out in Lightroom, and that was like really cool to get everything at like a similar level. So Imagine was like that, but the next level. First of all, a lot of people were scared off by the training aspect of it. And I think that's still the same thing today. And so a lot of them had bad or mixed results because they weren't training it properly. So then when they came out with these presets, these pre-trained models, people started to enjoy it more. But the thing is that you're using someone else's signature look. So I started to get frustrating because, it's taking a long time for it to improve. I'm pretty impatient. I know what the technology could do. So then I ran into Aftershoot. They came out with the editing. And so I got in on the founders program and also on the beta program. So pretty nice company, pretty responsive to the user's needs. But again, I would just get just a step up from Imagine. I wouldn't get that pop, that last 10% is where the magic happens. And I wouldn't get that. Then I came across Polarr Next, the WPPI, and I almost didn't go there because I'm like, another one, really?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of exhausting to learn all the features, and there's different nuances and behaviors of the software. But when I saw the demo where it was editing ahead, and we all know when we're doing, if your photos are sorted, there's a batch, and it's like, oh, it's that setup. It's a 3/4 shot of the bride and groom or their walking shot. It's whatever that burst was during that setup. It's pretty much the same settings in the camera.
Yeah.
And it's like in Lightroom, you got to go shift and then sync, and then usually something's off. and it's like, gosh, why can't they just edit like ahead of what you just did and select that as a reference, and then the rest get edited? And that's what I saw without even hearing what the rep was saying. I just saw these images like magically edited ahead. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that's how come that's never happened? Like, oh, I couldn't believe it. And then I asked him, is it really editing ahead, like learning as you go? Mm-hmm. And then they said, yeah, it's in fact, you don't have to do this massive training event.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, who had the time for that, really, if you think about it? So then I looked more and I go, oh, it actually, not only does it look ahead, if you give it a reference photo, but it does a sampling of the entire project. Mm-hmm. And it knows which photos it needs to create a model to edit the project. And then it just keeps getting smarter, because then you're basically creating a style. And then that style is basically your AI model, but you don't have to go through the pain of it. It's insane. So I was super impressed. Mm-hmm. And then I took the software, which is still beta. I took it to the hotel and I put 5,000 photos through it. Mm-hmm. I just hammered it
that
so
night
hard.
You saw.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it took about 2 days, but I hammered it really hard because I'm like, okay, am I going to put, this much investment in yet another AI program? Mm-hmm. And I was getting through, once I really got the hang of it, I was getting through 700 photos an hour.
Yeah.
If there wasn't a lot of cropping issues and things like that. But, mm-hmm. but that's a really good speed to get the quality that I was getting. So just, I was just blown away. And so the architecture, I could tell right away as a programmer that the Polarr Next engineers are really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, really good. It was, I mean, how this thing is running in a Chrome web page and it's smoking any software out there. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have that, the design mode to library mode, pause that you have in Lightroom. Mm-hmm. It's just, it goes as fast as you can think. Yeah. And what else can you ask for? That's it. So, mm-hmm. Anyway, I was just really blown away. And I think this is where we need to go. There
have been other private beta testers that we work with that have a background in tech, but most of, all of our guests here on this channel are just, photographers. And so to be able to hear those words coming from you and to appreciate that, we really, really appreciate that. We would love to see your workflow in Polarr Next. I believe I asked you if we could see you import some images and then kind of like what you would do when you work through your flow.
So let's create a new project, and just going to select the folder.
So I want to preface too for the viewers again, we are in open beta, so some things may not work. And our support team is really on it. If something comes up, even during this recording, I'll ship it off to our developers and they'll work on it right away. So, and for our YouTube channel too, we love to get like just raw feedback, even if things don't work out or this or that. We want to be transparent in that. So, and then for you, Ken, with the spot healing, because a lot of what we do with Polarr Next is very transferable. Basically, when you mark as a reference, all the edits will apply. So when it comes to spot healing, when you do apply some spot healings to an image and you have a very similar image right after that, we have been able to transfer the spot healing to the next image. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
I saw the little demo of it when I was skiing. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to try this. But I resisted the temptation to try it this morning. So this is
Okay.
okay. So here's the folder with all my raws
Okay.
from the last shoot. So I'm just going to select it. And what would be more instructive to everybody? Should I create a new style or use my old style? What should I do?
Let's create a new style. Let's do a double whammy. Let's see how you would do that.
Let's just totally look how fast that is.
Yeah. Love it.
So yeah, the other thing is like, I used to get home from a wedding and like let the 1-to-1 previews go overnight. And then if something happened and my laptop went to sleep or whatever, I had to do it in the morning again. And the client wants their little sneak peek. But this is like, it still blows me away. Okay. So this is when I explained when I had seen that demo.
Yeah.
I'd seen this, I'm going, what is this? Cause I thought I was looking at Lightroom initially, but it was like, so I'm going to, go through here and look at,
real quick. If you can you full screen the Polarr Next? Awesome. Perfect.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a little micro wedding at City Hall. And, so I'm going to just go through here and, my style is I like to, take the background and pull it back a little bit. So the front, the subject pops. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that.
Okay.
And then go to the next one. And, this is pretty much very similar. People might ask, do I cull beforehand? And so I do things kind of different in that, I actually, because of the AI technology now, I'm turning this into a super strength over my competition. So I, as a part of my packages, my clients know they get to see everything. I have nothing to hide.
Wow.
And I never get, I used to get that super annoying. Are there more photos?
Yeah.
No, it's all gone. It's like they get to pick everything. I tell them if I took a photo of my foot or if something's completely blurry, okay, you're not going to see that.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're going to see it. And so,
it's really getting to that point though.
It's really a trip because people just love it. In this Instagram culture, maybe in the film days, that would be too many photos. But now I've only run into, I've been doing this 9 months now. And I've only had one bride who's just too busy in her job and says, can you pick them?
Yeah.
Okay. Compared to the other AI programs, this is like 1,000 times easier.
I like what you said too, as far as, being more in your right brain than your left brain.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with other interfaces besides Lightroom. You're learning how to upload album or catalogs, and it's got to equal up to like thousands, 5,000 worth of images. With Polarr Next, you just jump in and you start editing with that right side brain. And instantaneously, it's like you have someone working with you. You have an assistant who's working alongside you.
Yeah. It's so cool. Okay. So, there you go. I have all the references.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm going to finish the AI setup. And then you see right here, this is when I saw the demo and I was seeing that processing down the bottom. I'm like, is it actually using what it learned to edit? And sure enough.
Yeah. You saw the cropping, the shading
look
happening.
Look at this. It's just going through. It still blows my mind.
Yeah. So this is going to be really interesting because when you edit these, do you remove the circles in the ground?
I do for my finals. I do. And my approach at the City Hall weddings is that I tell my clients that the photos are going to look like you were married at City Hall in 1916 when it was opened up. So there's all these things, fire alarms and exit signs, and these drainage things. They're not original. Okay, so this is the size. Okay, take the size down. Okay.
And it looks like by default, the feathering is down to 0. So that might help to blend the edges for you.
This is so fun just to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I even go, let's take it to the limit. I mean, I even do see these stupid LED lights that they put in.
Okay.
I don't so, I mean, this is a torture test to be honest, but let's try it.
Oh, those are LEDs? I didn't realize.
I remember when they installed them, I was so pissed because
they look like
now I have to edit those out.
They look like cutouts in the concrete, and it's like the natural light coming through, but interesting. All right.
Okay. So I'm going to mark it as a reference. Should I do it?
Yeah. Here we go.
Okay.
So it went down the way.
I went backwards?
It went down to the 8622 I saw. So try this one just for fun, and then let's see if it'll, again, you just take out the storm drains. Try just the storm drains or whatever those are.
Yeah, I'll just do the storm drains.
Let's see.
Okay. My laptop's, the fan's going up, so it's definitely doing a lot of thinking right now.
Yeah.
But it's nothing like...
Oh, there it goes.
Oh, man.
Let's see if it got rid of any... No.
Well, hey, there's less here. Well, let's do the AB. Is that the AB here?
Before, after?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It didn't.
But it's still processing. I'm hearing the fan. So.
Yeah. It's,
yeah.
I've had it work a couple times, and it can be very picky with like, it's got to be like very, very similar. And I guess that maybe could be a good thing, right? Because when you're marking images and then you apply spot healing to an image, and then if it were to apply the spot healing to an image you didn't want it to, that can kind of hamper things. So
yeah, this style that I just created was created so quick that if I somehow my computer crashed and I didn't have a backup, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I could make the style in one or two, shoots. Like this is getting close to where I am anyway with my style that I've done, maybe 20 projects on already since WPPI. So
that's awesome.
I mean, it's just you got to try it to believe it. Yep.
And the other thing too, we weren't sitting around waiting for anything to open. There's no lag, no delay. Program open. Like when I open up Lightroom nowadays, it takes me a while. Like it just sits on that front screen, no like initial pop up yet. It's just like blank Lightroom, and then it finally like populates in. This one is just like I jump right in and just go, just
jump right in. Like this is so powerful that usually I can't talk when I'm editing, and I'm just having a good time here. We're talking about this, and I'm like, I'm almost done with this. Like, to give it to the client for the proofing, right? For them to select the ones they want.
Aside from this project, do you have any other images that you've edited with Polarr Next that like you can show off, or it's just more to show that like Polarr Next is more than capable of handling and like producing those high quality edits, match the quality that you would get normally.
This is all straight out of Polarr Next.
Wow.
And he told me, he goes, you didn't have to edit them. Like I don't have to do anything. And I didn't want to go into it, but it's like, I got carried away having a great time. Oh, this is one of the biggest dresses I've ever seen.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, actually, this is so early on after WPPI. I hadn't played around with adding the S curve, so I would have S curved these some more. These are a little on the dull side, but wait, this is just Polarr Next, and I just jammed it out and sent him the JPEGs. And I told, because he wanted the RAWs, and when we first talked about that I was going to shoot for him, he wanted the RAWs, and I said, I'm giving you JPEGs. If you want the RAWs, I'll give them to you, but I don't think you're going to need the RAWs. And he goes, you're right, I don't need the RAWs.
You're able to match his editing style. Somewhat.
Another part of the deal is like, I'm going to shoot my style.
Okay.
And he's like, I mean, he's the guy that I talked to, that I referred to before, that introduced me to wedding photography. Mm-hmm. So he's like, yeah, just do your thing.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, look, this is all Polarr Next.
Yep. So looking forward, looking ahead, Polarr Next. How do you see Polarr Next addressing common pain points in photo editing? If you can just break it down.
Okay.
What are some pain points that photographers will be able to remedy by using our program?
Okay. So what I didn't know is Polarr Next is an established company with a lot of intellectual property in the visual space, not only images, but also video. And I read up on the company, and they have done and continue to do some custom, very complex projects for big companies. So they have some serious technology. Mm-hmm. So when I started talking to some of the design team, I was just throwing out ideas that I've always wanted. And instead of like, I mean, look, yeah, I send them everything. See that? I mean, that's,
yeah.
Yeah. It's a little dark, but anyway, yeah, there you go. I mean, you can see why I was happy. I thought it was pretty cool. Like,
and those situations are very tricky, coming out of the shadow into the light and being able to balance that correctly. It's definitely tricky.
Yeah. And the hard part about this one was that, I was using his flash. So, you have to balance this just right, but we got a couple of them, and I was shooting the flash at full pop. So it couldn't fire every time. So like right here, it didn't fire the last one, but, and then a couple of them, the guy moved, and then, the flash went into the lens, but this client's super happy. I mean, basically just want not this last one, but the one in the middle here. Okay. So, going back to the, talking to the, or what to expect in the future and the pain points. Yeah. So I just started thinking, what slows me down? Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, there's some, things that we have been accustomed to that we don't question, because the way Adobe has given us new features has been so slow and there's no real alternative unless you're like a studio photographer. Then Capture One, a lot of people do that. But for getting through big weddings, I don't know anybody that can stay in business without using Lightroom.
Yeah, that's good.
But when you think about what takes a long time, let's start with, I'm going to go back to Polarr Next here. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I guess.
Okay. Let's start with, in Lightroom, you go down all these panels and you turn them on and off. And some people use solo mode but then you realize, oh gosh, that's not working for me, because I You need to use this other thermometer. And then there's things like effects. Here's a perfect example. So I sometimes use a vignette. It just adds a little drama. Do I use feather? I can't remember last time I used feather. Do I use grain?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't, but I know some friends that do. But the point is that I use vignette about 100 times more than these guys. But I have to see them every time. So Adobe has forced us to get used to that these panels have to be independent, full panels.
Yeah.
And just deal with it. So I was talking to one of the chief developers and said, what if Polarr Next in the background evaluates how often you use these thermometers? And then you have a mode, you don't have to use it, but you have a mode that puts them in the order that you use them. So basically you'd never have to scroll down, most likely.
Yeah.
You just have it all right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then of course you can have a preset, a preference where you move them around. And no, I actually want exposure to be at the top. But it'll learn from the way you work, because that's the ethos of Polarr Next. It already does learn from the way you work. So then how fast will that be? Boom, 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 boom. Next. That the panel thing takes forever. Okay. So that's one thing. What about cropping? So Lightroom gives you all these features, and you have to go one by one. I mean, Polarr Next still is like that. Go one by one. Now, how many people have an intuitive ability to pick the perfect crop the first time? Not many. Okay. Plus, what if, and I'm saying perfect, meaning, can you in your head think of the rule of thirds and the golden ratio, and that plus all of these dimensions, and figure out which one's going to look the best just in your head without playing around? And I don't know anyone that can do that. So I asked the developers, like, what if, since you know the subject, what if you put, like, here, this is a rule of thirds here. So we'll just do an alternative crop. So we put the rule of thirds run through the heads. Okay. But then there's the other variable of switching it to another form factor. So if you think about it, you have how many of these? Okay, let's say there's 10. Then you have rule of thirds, golden ratio. Then you have horizontal and vertical. So you get those all together, and there's so many options. But Polarr Next can assess. Okay, it'll automatically for you give you an option of putting the rule of thirds through the head, and then you can see a whole panel of different crops in this space here, and you just click on the one you like.
Yeah.
So I did an informal survey of my my photographer friends and asked them how many do artistic crops, and everybody said, I only do them for the final delivery and for the album and for prints.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane, right? Because cropping is a really important part of the artistic expression of a photo. And most photographers don't have time to do it.
Yeah.
So it's going to use the AI to help you put the rule of thirds and put the golden ratio in the right spot and show you, and then you just pick it and keep going. And then there's opportunities down the road for even more than that. But it starts to understand, oh, when you do a portrait, let's go to a portrait. Let's do Okay. Here's a portrait.
Nice.
So I always give the flowers to the groom and take a shot right there. It's always a great shot. So here I'm going to go to a 4x5, classic portrait mode, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if you're going to do that, whenever it's kind of a portrait setup, the AI could figure that out, and then it'll basically give that crop for you. It's to the AI engine. It could potentially be just like making a reference photo with a certain color profile.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're going to have very distinctive variety of crops, and your clients are going to they're not going to really know necessarily.
Yeah.
That's why. They're going to just be more engaged, and everyone's going to react to the photos better, because how many times do you okay, there's a lot of wasted space in this composition, but almost every photographer I know would deliver a proof like this, or let the client decide if they want that photo. And so, once the AI gets smart about this, you're going to have stronger compositions. And then there's a possibility of having alternate compositions, right?
Yeah.
Like they're very different photos, and you can make arguments which one you like, but the bottom line is the client can have even more options, and it takes you no extra effort really. So that's the kind of stuff. That's the way Polarr Next thinks. And so to get out of the almost groupthink we have, that we're stuck with the way Lightroom works, and the way, ultimately it's going to take a long time, no matter what the technology is, to get a really nice delivery to a client. And that's actually not true. There's a lot that slows us down that we don't even think about.
Yep. And it's been that way for decades, and just the whole business model. It's just all the other programs out there just built on top of that, and that's the hardest thing, is to be able to do, like in my job and reaching out to photographers, their workflows is their way of life, and when you introduce a new program that might not utilize their business model of selling presets and selling courses to help with Lightroom, it's hard to change that. But I love what's happening. I love the forward thinking. I love the, when they asked me before I was on board with Polarr Next, like, what would it take for you to leave Lightroom? For someone to ask that question, other than Caption One, that this is it, and so moving forward, so excited to see what's ahead for Polarr Next and how it's going to continue to change even your workflow. You just got back from your trip. You got spot healing to dig into. You got marking all your references in monochrome, black and white, to deliver black and white sets. You got point color to check out. We can't wait to hear all your feedback on the new updates and things like that. So
yeah, it's and then there's even like the few things I just mentioned. There's some stuff that I talked to some of the guys about. Yeah. And it's going to just like, you think that these little things are a big deal. When you put it all together, just think that you're going to be able to come home from a shoot, and it's going to take probably longer for you to get the files in your than for the AI to do the edits. Yeah. Okay. But then we talked about a couple things to make more, like the cropping and all that, and the smart tool set. But what if once you're here, you don't have to take the photos anywhere? They're already ready to send to the client. Like the idea that how we move things around over and over again. I'm in Lightroom. I have to export. I use a PicTime plugin, and I have to export to PicTime.
Yeah.
And then if there's any edits that have to be, the client says, "Oh, can you change this? Can you change that?" I have to do a re-export. Why do you have to do a re-export? These are already essentially on the web.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I'm done with this job, I just click this download button on the upper right hand corner.
Yep.
And then I get my JPEGs or TIFFs if I want the TIFFs. But what if you don't have to do that? You just basically put the client's email and you send it to them.
Yeah. Yep.
So
you send it to a gallery.
So that's the way these guys are thinking. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Love it. Man, Ken, such a great conversation chatting with you. Get to know your background a little bit more, how you got started in photography, and you're just really in-depth impressions of Polarr Next from your background point of view. Really, really love it. I would love to hear, before we close, any last words, anything you'd want to say to the viewer or anyone who's considering making that switch.
Yeah, I would say that you owe it to yourself to not follow the groupthink that you have to live your life behind the computer editing. Because the technology is definitely at that inflection point. And I would say, I would take it even further, that if you don't use some of these technologies, you're going to be pressured by your competitors.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot of feedback because I'm pretty involved with PPA. We have a chapter in the wine country. So I do, I'm a print judge, and then I mentor some photographers. So I have a pulse on what's going on with everybody.
Yeah. And
a lot of people are having getting less weddings this year, and it's getting more competitive. And then some people that have been doing really well with SEO, they maybe found an SEO person, they're paying a lot of money. Then all of a sudden, this March 5th Google update screwed just changed the whole.
Interesting.
So, you're like, oh gosh, getting inquiries is a big deal. But if your competitor is getting the photos done at a higher level because the AI is helping them, and sooner, and then they're able to put these photos up on their blog and everything, and you're just still stuck editing a project, and they're just running laps around you. People are going to go out of business by not opening up their eyes and at least trying out some of this stuff, because I used to see it as this is how you can up your game. But I think it's really how you keep your business going.
All right, Ken, thank you so much for hanging out with me this past hour. I really appreciate your time and just everything that you did prepare for this, and for taking us through your workflow, talking about AI and Polarr Next and what's next for our space. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate the opportunity, Aaron. And just if it can help a few photographers kind of transform their business and get competitive again, totally worth it.
Yeah. Sounds good. And if you want to get in touch with Ken, I'm going to have his website, his Instagram linked down below in the description of this video, so you guys can go say hi and say, hey, you did a great job on the interview. All right, Ken, I'll see you later. Have a good one. And that's a wrap. Huge thanks to Ken Mendoza for joining me and giving us the inside scoop on his switch to Polarr Next for his editing workflow. If Ken's story has sparked your interest in revolutionizing your editing workflow, Polarr Next might just be what you're looking for. Head down to the description below to claim your free 2,000 export credits. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next one.